Good morning. I am Dennis Swinford, Director of Campus Planning here at UMass Boston. I am really excited about being able to share with you today our draft campus master plan. We have the question and answer box open. So as we go through the presentation, please type your questions in and we will respond either verbally or in the or to the question and answer or in the question and answer box. And we are also available. I'm also available for comments at my email address, dennis.switford@umb.edu. So you can also, after the presentation, you have questions, you're welcome to send me an email. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Natasha Espada, who is the lead architecture firm on our for this effort. So with that, Natasha.
Thank you, Dennis, and it's great to be here. We have our team here, which also is Susan Kernite from Studio NA, and Linda Easley from Easley Partners, and then Beth Long and Adam Gross. Adam will be presenting as well from Ayer St. Gross as master planners. So we have a presentation for you today. Susan, can you share the presentation? And what we'd like to do is basically go through where we are right now. And all of the work that we've done with all of you until now. So the meeting objectives today, we will discuss that, then the schedule and the process, then the master plan update. We're going to talk about planning principles and key drivers, integrated healthy campus and sustainability, the existing conditions. Then we're going to go up to a summary of future space needs and the explored options and synthesized plan, which will be really exciting. And then we have the heritage building opportunities for Wheatley we're using as a prototype, and then next steps in discussion. So we wanted to remind everyone that when we first started the process, we love this quote from Chancellor Marcelo Suarez Orozco that said, to develop a plan for our university that is data informed, adapts best practices to our unique campus, builds on and enhances our significant existing assets, creates opportunities where we have gaps, and is bold yet realistic in its ambitions. And that's what we've tried to do with our team, with UMass Boston, and with the entire campus, really. And so, Dennis, do you want to go through the meeting objectives?
No, that's fine. Go ahead, Natasha.
Okay. So what we'd like to do is engage in a dialogue that supports the alignment of the physical campus with the strategic plan, and they have been both aligned from the beginning. And then we want to receive input on the direction of key master plan recommendations in anticipation of the draft master plan document. So this is the time for us to hear from you. And so this is when we'd love to hear all the input that you have from all the work that's been done. So for schedule and process, we've been working on this since November 2021. So it's been almost a year. The first, we had 3 workshops in Discover and Analyze phase, which was from November through April of this year. And we did information gathering, campus tours, facilities conditions, and space analysis. We then went into an April through June of exploring phase, where we did workshop 4 and 5, which included a campus analysis, the master plan programming, planning principles, conceptual plan, initial scenarios, and then refined scenarios. And now we're in this refine and document phase, where you can see here that we've had workshop 6 recently. And here in the blue box is open forums with faculty, staff, and students, and community engagement. And this is where we are right now. So we have enough information to share this with you and get feedback so that we can have final documentation by December 2022. And so the process has been equitable, inclusive, and transparent, which is really important to all of us. And so we've had different working group sessions. We've had review presentations to strategic chairs, stakeholder groups. As you can see here, we were on campus. We've done it on Zoom. We did surveys, drop-in sessions at the campus center. And so there've been multiple ways of engaging, even though we've been doing everything in a hybrid mode. And then the 10 comments we heard most frequently. And number 1 is the poor condition of the heritage buildings and the lack of equitability with the rest of the campus. Cultural diversity should be reflected in the physical space, since it's the most diverse campus in the state. We should leverage our Boston location, create a welcoming campus. The library wants to be a hub of student access, that there isn't enough student space and the campus would like more. And also collaboration spaces and working in a communal way. The space constraints have a negative impact on the current programs and impede future growth, and then better wayfinding. And this was just, we heard this from every single group. And sorry, there's one more, it's just the mic thing. And there needs to be better connectivity and accessibility between buildings. So from the master plan update, we're just going to talk about the planning principles, the healthy campus sustainability, existing conditions, future space needs, and then the synthesized plan. And Adam's going to join me for this. So aligning principles with the strategic plan was really critical. So there were 4 major principles here: is creating a welcoming, inclusive, and health promoting UMass Boston campus, investing in a high quality learning environment, inclusive learning environment, creating a physical campus that supports community, and then leveraging assets and resources to support a sustainable, resilient, and nimble campus. And so we've used this in all of the work that we've done. The key drivers were on-campus undergraduate enrollment will remain constant, and then graduate enrollment will likely increase. Enhancing student experience through the renovation of the heritage buildings is a priority. They haven't been really, they've been minimally renovated since they were built. Over time, looking at strategically to adapt space on the campus in traditional and innovative ways, making physical and meaningful connections with the neighbors. It's a great location, and connection to Boston and the metropolitan area is important. And the integration of the CAF Pastor future development is also part of the strategic plan and the campus master plan. And so I think I'm just going to touch just on a couple of words here, but the integrated healthy campus elements and value is really important. So we want it to be intuitive and accessible, better outdoor connectedness, create active recreation and additional green space and plantings. Looking at the campus as a living laboratory. We also wanted to simplify pedestrian connections and promoting orientation on the campus and celebrating the cultural heritage. So the landscape and building forms, we wanted to definitely increase the outdoor comfort, including shade and wind mitigation, which we know is important, and transparency between the indoors and the outdoors. Making sure we have human scaled elements and that we encourage vibrancy on the campus. Transit connections were really important, including bicycle networks, and then showing campus sustainability elements. The unique location has a lot of opportunities for that, and then managing waste and resources. Sustainability has been a really key piece of this. And we need to follow it through the state mandate, the Executive Order 594, which includes 95% emissions reduction. And that can be done through energy efficiency, minimizing fossil fuels, and on and off site renewable energy. So we've been following all of the mandates of the state and trying to be as sustainable as possible in general, and following these guidelines. And so when we first went to the campus in last November, and we've been many times now, we looked at all of the buildings. And so we color coded them based on what we saw. And so the 3 red buildings here, which are some of the heritage buildings, Healy, McCormick, and Wheatley, are in really poor condition and need full renovation. We observed that the 2 buildings, Clark, Quinn, are in very poor condition, so they need significant renovation. And then the green buildings, some of them are new buildings, and some of them are within the past 15 to 20 years, are in good condition. And some may need some tweaks, but in general, the ones that need it the most are the red and the kind of the light red. And so one thing that we also noticed, and a summary of our findings for this, is that there's a disparity between the condition of the buildings on campus, as we mentioned, the heritage buildings and the rest of the buildings that are on campus. So one of the things is creating equity. So besides new roofing and elevators, the original heritage buildings haven't really had much renovations. And the newer buildings, again, are in pretty good condition. There are some programming things that could be improved, but we need to make them all more equitable. And then the landscape quad, which is really exciting, the SDQD project is under construction, and that's going to create an amazing opportunity between buildings, which Adam's going to talk about in a second. And then major upgrades to campus utility systems are constructed as part of the UCRR project. So there are a lot of upgrades happening with this SDQD and the UCRR.
So Natalie has spent the introduction here really focusing on the existing campus and focusing on a series of guiding principles and analysis of buildings and systems on campus. And I just want to just step back for a moment. First of all, thank you all for coming. We now have 72, for those of you who can't see the number, 72 participants. So that's just great. And I hope we have a good cross section of faculty, staff, and students. Unfortunately, we can't see you all, but welcome and good morning. Again, I'm Adam Gross with Air St. Gross. We're an architectural and planning firm that focuses on college and university work all over the world. And we really base all of our campus planning on an idea that the principles and the strategic plan of a university should be reflected into physical plans. We go back to that original quote from the chancellor. Our goal is really to create a physical plan that embodies those principles. So we look at the qualitative aspects on campus, which Natasha just spent some time sharing with you. And we also look at the qualitative, or the quantitative pieces of the puzzle, which for us really, it starts and ends with space. How many square feet does UMass Boston have currently to meet its current population? And what we discovered through this, which will not be a surprise to many, is that there are huge deficits in just the amount of space, saying nothing of the quality. So if we wanted to kind of right size the entire campus, we would need around, let's just say an average of around 380,000 net assignable, which means the space between the walls. And that doesn't include the corridors and the bathrooms and the elevators and such, just the usable space. If you gross that up, we would need about 600 to 700,000 square feet, which is a lot. You know, a normal academic building is somewhere between 150 to 200,000 square feet. So you can see the need is significant. But we don't see this as an end-sum game of just building new buildings. We see that there are other opportunities. So the strategy for addressing this space deficit really for us begins, and most importantly, is with renovations, and particularly the heritage buildings. And we'll share with you how we can not only make them more attractive and enjoyable to be in, but also more efficient in terms of the use of the space. So that ties into space utilization for the entire campus. How can we better utilize the existing space between the walls of the campus? Obviously, new construction will be a part of it, but that won't happen all at once. So this plan wants to be a long-term flexible framework that can advise where future buildings go and the scale of what those buildings might be. And then there's also extraordinary, exciting partnerships that are on the horizon with the calf pasture, moving towards hopefully engaging a developer to work on that land that could potentially accommodate some of the space needs for UMass Boston. So next slide, Susan. So if you look at the top bar, that's the existing space. So about 1 million net assignable square feet. So that's without, again, the elevators and the shafts and bathrooms and such. And in the bottom, you see our proposal. And some of the things that we're really pleased with is that we're showing an increase in the amount of classrooms, a slight increase in the amount of class labs, but workspace is staying just a little bit, not static, it's growing a little bit in this chart, but we're relying on work from home and hybrid to really be able to create more equity and more efficiency for the faculty offices. The things we're really most excited about in many ways are the student spaces. So what you see on the top is in yellow, the tiny little amount of student space, gathering space, hangout space. And on the bottom chart, you see a much bigger gold and yellow in terms of open labs and student space, and also a significant increase in athletics and rec. So we'll show you now how we've taken this 330 to 400,000 square feet of need and kind of organize the campus for the future to accommodate those needs. So we started by looking at scenarios, and some of you hopefully were involved in some of the workshops where we explored these. And what you're seeing here is 3 scenarios that we shared with the campus. We actually did more than just 3. But the dark blue buildings are future proposed buildings that would be new construction. And very importantly, all of the heritage buildings we're showing as containing significant renovations. So the light blue on those heritage buildings indicates both new space, new kind of captured space underneath a lot of those exterior columns, and also just massively renovated and repurposed space. So out of those 3 scenarios, we kind of created a hybrid scenario, which is our draft plan, which is, if we go to the next slide.
Excuse me, Adam, I see a question here that says, could you talk about how you will be addressing the predictions related to sea level changes and impacts of climate change? Critically important given the location. And I'm going to let you answer, but just in general, when we look at the floodplain, it so happens that most of the campus is not in the floodplain when we look at those maps. But Adam.
Well, yeah, that's what I was going to say. The same thing, Natasha, that the campus is kind of up, it's raised on a bit of a plateau. So and a lot of the older heritage buildings are up there on that plateau as well as the new buildings. So, but I don't know, Grace, do you want to respond to this? Grace Hotpop is the new sustainability head at UMass Boston, or Dennis, I don't want to put you on the spot, but if you guys want to respond to that question?
I would be happy to. And just quickly, you guys, oh, pardon me. Yes, we have been looking at that, and as we have said, we are up on a plateau. But what happens to us is, unfortunately, it gets kind of difficult to get here. Morrissey Boulevard, the T station are all places that are predicted to be underwater unless we do something about raising those. So we are working. We're working with our state agencies and the T, working towards making improvements in the future to make accessibility and getting to the campus possible. But the campus itself is out of the sea level rise. We are also working on meeting the executive order for state facilities to be sustainable in the future. We can get into that a little bit more at the end of the rest of the presentation. If you have any other questions, thanks.
Thanks for that very important question. So those three scenarios that we just shared with you were really built on a kind of a series of big ideas. And one of the major big ideas that we have for the campus is to create a more welcoming arrival. Right now, you're coming into a zone here opposite the garage that is full of service vehicles and trucks, and not the most welcoming campus environment. So what we're proposing is a relocation of the central loading to go kind of in the lower well adjacent or between Wheatley and McCormick. If we do that, we can then create a really great new building site up here, and you'll see in a minute how that might look. That would then build on this very simple idea of the kind of strong pedestrian connection that visually connects out to the water. So we want to really reinforce the visual connections to this incredible site and visual connections to the water. And then, this will come as no surprise, we've identified two large existing land banks for future buildings that are really great new development sites. And then, of course, we want to innovate with a calf pasture. So those three scenarios and these kind of overall big ideas resulted in the final draft plan. Go to the next slide. Which is really built on an idea to increase engagement around this great new quadrangle that's under construction right now. So right now you see in blue is all just academic space, very little student space. What we see in the future is to create more of a ring of student space, lounges, meeting rooms, seminar rooms, student support spaces that ring that central quad and that integrate in with the academic spaces to the south and to the athletic spaces to the north. So that then converts into this final illustrative plan, which is still a draft, but we feel like we're getting close. So I'll just kind of walk you through, and the sequencing and the timing of this is largely dependent on funding, of course, but one of the first moves we'd like to suggest is this idea of this new central loading facility here, which could then create this new site for this big blue building that you see up here, which could be a great new site for a new academic building and could tie into a renovated Quinn. So when we say we're renovating the heritage buildings, we would include Quinn, Healy, McCormick, and Wheatley. So that's identifies and really reflects a series of projects that could be done incrementally over time, either at small scales or much larger scales in terms of the renovation of those buildings. So again, everything you see in light blue would be renovated. And then the darker blue represents a new power plant, which addresses sustainability, a new, much more energy efficient power plant, new greenhouses for life science studies, a large new academic building that could be upwards of 250,000 square feet, another large academic building here that could be around 150,000 square feet. And then new rec center. I hope everyone is happy about that idea. New enhanced athletic facilities and rec and wellness facilities adjacent to Clark. So those are the kind of big moves. Let us share with you now some three-dimensional views of what this might look like kind of from a balloon if you're up in the air. So you can see, again, Wheatley renovated, and what the indication that being renovated are the darker blue areas are ideas of tearing off some of the brick and adding glass to make Wheatley more transparent and more open. We would want to do the same thing in McCormick and Healy. You can see that new campus edge building and the new pedestrian spine that creates, which I'll explain in a minute. The new health and wellness facility. And then we actually are able to integrate a athletic field here that might sit on a couple of levels of parking below. And then a new academic building, to two big new academic buildings here adjacent to the quad and out at the point. This next view is from the other direction, and it starts showing you that new arrival point. So as you arrive in the future, you would come in, and instead of seeing a loading dock, you would see really the main kind of front gate into the campus that you see right here. And that front gate would have in it a stair and maybe an escalator, or certainly elevators that would get you up to the main quad level and continue to bring you right into the spine of campus that would again connect all the way out to the water. You can see the new athletic facility here, new academic building here. And then what you're seeing over here is just a kind of potential capacity. This is not yet designed, but a capacity of the adjacent sites that a developer hopefully will be hired for soon for the calf pasture. So if you imagine that you're kind of entering into campus today, that looks like the next slide. So here's the arrival. On the right is the science building, and then the loading docks that are adjacent to the service areas. And if we could wave a magic wand, look at what that might look like in the future. So this shows the idea of a beacon, a glass beacon that could have a series of meeting rooms and seminar rooms in it. And that would be the kind of termination and beginning of that campus spine. So you'd be able to enter in to that building at grade. You might also have an entrance into the new academic building as a separate entrance. And then you would move into an open space and be able to go up a series of stairs and escalators or elevators to get up to the campus inside this new building. So if you imagine you had done that, you had gone up these stairs and then turned around and were looking back this way. The next slide shows what that might look like. So this is a new teaching and learning building that we did at University of Maryland. And it has this kind of same idea of entering in and then connecting to a higher elevation on campus. So new, brighter, lighter, more glass, more color, and really kind of moving away from the browns and the tans of the 1960s and 1970s for the heritage buildings.
Hi, Adam. We have two more questions. We have one that says, what will happen to the roadway to nowhere that lies between ISC and Healy Library passing Quinn? I don't know if we want to go back to the plan, Susan.
So the road between highway to nowhere.
The lights between ISC and Healy Library, passing Quinn.
Yeah, that you'll see. We want to turn that into a pedestrian spine with the big cascading staircase. Great question. And that spine is really a cool opportunity, because what we're showing is if you're walking here, that you would actually go, this would be a bridge that would connect the existing rec center to the new wellness center, and you go underneath that bridge on foot through the new quad, go adjacent to the ISC, and then down a series of cascading stairs to connect to the water. That would be purposeful. So that's a great question. I'm sorry I didn't emphasize that more.
And then we have a couple more here. Love seeing additional green space. And then what are the plans for the calf pasture pump house? It seems like a very cool old building to keep and restore.
Yeah, so the pump house is part of the calf pasture RFP. So there's a process going on right now within the state with the asset management board of this state of Massachusetts system to put out a request for proposals to engage a real estate developer to come in and redevelop all that calf pasture land, including the old pump station. And it could be renovated for uses that the university could partner in or lease, or it could just be market rate housing, could be housing for graduate students. It could be space for life science companies who want to be near the university. So imagine it like a little mini Kendall Square or a seaport kind of development.
Right. And then the last one, and I know Dennis is answering this question, but the comments related to workspace relying on hybrid work will require a change in culture from university leaders. While hybrid and remote work is being allowed, the administration continues to struggle with what that really means and has not really figured out at all how to manage and lead a distributed workforce. And I think in general, we're seeing this on most universities. It's the kind of, we're in a transition phase of hybrid and new, but Dennis, I think you're answering this one now.
Thank you for the comment. I would say anonymous attendee is exactly right. So yes, thank you.
And a new one just came in. Adam, can you show where parking will be available beyond the garage? Will the parking spaces below the heritage buildings be restored?
The parking below the heritage buildings will not be fully restored for parking. We are proposing a new parking deck, which would be set into the ground and then go up a couple of levels. And then on top of it would be a new athletic field, which will show you an image of what that might look like in a second. So let's go back to where we were, if we could. So this is a project we've shown a lot. Many of you probably have seen this in earlier presentations. This is at UMass Amherst, and it's a brutalist building, much like the heritage buildings. But what the architects and the university did here was they created a wrapper. So if you can envision this is where the old building used to end. So these concrete columns here and the concrete floors are where the old building ends. So if you stood here, you'd be standing outside. So what they did is just add this layer of glass, and you can see it here, about 20 feet away from the old concrete, and then brought in new interior finishes and made it really a cool, vibrant space. And so we see this opportunity of creating more transparency, not only from what the buildings look like from the inside, but really importantly, to take a better advantage of this incredible setting and have spaces that look out, both to the new quad and also to the water. So that's a big theme. Another theme, picking up on your road to nowhere question, is connections to the water. So we envision this new staircase that would connect down between Healy and the Life Science Building, looking something like this. So it would be a green space, but also a terraced kind of garden, and then a big set of cascading stairs that would connect down to the water. And we see a couple of places where this could happen. And then the multi-purpose field that would have parking on top. So this is an example of that. And there are many examples of this, around the country, and Boston actually has many parking garages with green space on top of them. So that's the overall plan, but really we're much more excited about the possibilities for the heritage buildings than just, the new buildings. The new buildings are easy to, it's generally easy to build, and you can imagine they'd be up on par with your wonderful new buildings that you've done. But these heritage buildings are tricky. Their structural systems are constraining. Their mechanical systems are constraining. So Beth Long, I want to give Beth all credit here on our team, did these wonderful studies for Wheatley. And Beth has really been leading our entire plan, by the way. It's been our kind of fearless leader on the campus plan. So if we go to the next slide, this shows existing Wheatley and what we're proposing. So what we're showing, we're going to be showing you in these new drawings of how Wheatley could be renovated, is to have more medium-sized classrooms in a size range of about 31 to 60. More class labs, particularly for engineering and chemistry, a lot more shared interdisciplinary space, offices that can be more flexible to accommodate remote working, and then a lot more student space. You can see again that yellow and gold space increasing significantly. So if we think about Wheatley right now, it really is a maze. It's very difficult to find your way around. Oh, I'm sorry. Sorry. So these next slides, I got ahead of myself. These next slides show just some examples of these types of renovations. So obviously the current situation on Wheatley on the left is suboptimal. We see classrooms these days that are much more flexible, much more about not just having the sage on the stage, but having a way for students to interact with each other. So furniture on wheels, flexible furniture, glass in the classrooms to let daylight in, which is not very evident currently in Wheatley. So a lot of opportunities for great new classroom technologies to be incorporated. The public spaces, if we go to the next slide, also can be drastically improved. The slide on the right is the Hayden Library at Arizona State University, which we did a massive renovation of, and it is a heritage building, era building. It's a mid-century modern 70s building. But here we just kind of stripped out all of the old finishes and added in new carpet, new lighting, new furniture, and a series of glass seminar rooms and conference rooms for student activities. Circulation, obviously right now it's, again, not just confusing, but a bit dreary, the current Wheatley, and we'd say same for McCormick and the library, but on the right, what we can do with simple new finishes, more glass, more openness, better lighting. And then this is that South Dartmouth example again, where we can bring a new glass face out. So imagine that this glass, this current porch, which is kind of dark here, if this was a new glass wall, that you'd capture new space on the inside of that and create much more transparency and openness. So on the lower left, the small plan on the lower left is the existing floor plan of Wheatley. So you enter underneath these big columns into kind of a dark area. You enter in, and then you can see out, which is very nice. But if you turn to the right, your view is kind of dead-ended, and the corridors are very confusing. So what we're showing here in this diagram that Beth did is to create new space by, so this is the existing building. And these are the existing columns. So we can bring out glass and then create better space for 30 to 60, or 30 to 40 anyway in this plan, classrooms, and create this straight shot of circulation. So half of architecture is just lining things up. So we're doing that here by creating a visual connection through a series of lounges. So the lighter yellow are lounge spaces, the blue and darker gold are classroom spaces. So what would those spaces look like? If we go to the next slide, you can start to see that we're thinking about one central kind of atrium space that would bring the existing courtyard down to grade and have a series of stairs in it. So it might look kind of like this. I know this is kind of hard to imagine, but trust me, this space that you're seeing here again at Arizona State used to look the way Wheatley looks today. So these are just examples of different types of spaces that we think can be integrated into the existing structure of Wheatley. So that would include all, it could be done incrementally, one floor at a time. So we're not, shutting off the capacity. Beth has some experiences. Beth used to work in the University Architect's office at George Mason and has a lot of experience renovating buildings where temporary trailers were brought in. So there's a lot of ways to do it without shutting down the entire facility. Next slide. And then on the top floor, we certainly don't want to forget about faculty offices. So this shows ways that the office floors could be renovated, again, opened up, more lounge spaces, more open spaces. Many students these days don't want to necessarily meet their faculty in their office. They feel more comfortable meeting in a lounge or in a classy area where they feel safe. And so those could be incorporated into all the faculty office floors. So that is it. It's a lot. We know we welcome more questions. I'm going to let Dennis wrap us up with the next slide.
One of the really important aspects of this master plan was to have the alignment with our strategic plan that we have had, that we have just published last month. And we have in this graphic, maybe somewhat difficult to read on your screen, but on this graphic on the top, we have the 4 planning principles that we started out with. And then down the left-hand side, we have the big parts or the big recommendations in the master plan, for instance, the heritage building renovations and how they can begin to create equity for our core, which is one of the key aspects of the strategic plan. So if you go down the left-hand side of this chart, you'll be able to see how the recommendations made in the master plan help us align our physical environment with our strategic plan that we've just published. And with that, we'd be more than happy to go into the question and answers and answer those live since we have some more time. But again, we go back one more, just so I can remember to do this. We have had a master plan working group. These are all members of our community. You probably know some of the names here. If you have questions or concerns, they are all willing and able to talk with you about the master plan and where we are in terms of the process and get your ideas if you don't necessarily want to type out something to the master plan at UNBA. Pardon me, masterplan at unb.edu site. You can also check in with one of the master plan working group individuals. And then I also want to thank our master plan design team as being a really important part of having this done. So with that, we can go to questions and answers. And you want to bring up the next slide. So I was typing, an answer to one question here about space off of campus and the space we lease. Yes, we are working at bringing people that when it's appropriate, we're looking at bringing people that we have in leased space back on campus, and we have included that in our space projection. And then Adam, would you like to do the next one, which is Wheatley as a prototype, said 10% office space. Is that prototype is extending to other existing buildings? That's a lot of reduction for staff and faculty offices across campus. That's the thought. What's the thought about how to account for such a reduction? Where we all sit. Thanks. Adam, would you like to take that, or would you like me to?
I'd be happy for you to. I'll chime in.
I would say that we're not. I think that there was probably a misunderstanding. I don't think that we're looking at reducing office space on campus. I think that we are looking at ways in which we work, and the earlier comment about how we're working in hybrid and how that affects space on campus, and the fact that we are in a time of transition and learning is really quite exciting. So no, we're not taking away places where people sit, and we're not taking away 10% of the office space.
We're actually showing a slight increase in total faculty office space, but also, confident for at least the immediate future that hybrid work is going to take some of the pressure off everyone needing their own private office.
Michael Johnson, can you talk more about new and renovated athletic and recreation spaces? Will there be a replacement to the pool, outdoor basketball courts, etc.?
It's a great question. Hey, Dennis, could I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Could I suggest that Beth, knowing that Beth has a particular expertise in athletics, maybe I have Beth respond to that one?
Sure.
So I think the idea was that recreation and athletics share space, both field space and indoor facilities right now. And there's not enough for either group. And so the thought is in the programming phase, we would figure out, or whoever is doing programming would figure out the most need, whether that's a pool. Right now, the boxes that we're showing look like 2 basketball courts, so that athletics and rec could each have court space. Whether that's the right split or not, we don't know. But we're also calling it health and wellness, thinking that there are opportunities to combine that space. We've heard a lot about research related to athletics and the wellness and the health programs. So I think that there's capacity there, and the programming phase will really determine whether it's a pool or a court or classroom space or research space.
So the next question we have is, all the glass in classrooms may make seeing whatever is on camera, e.g., for example, PowerPoint slides, videos, difficult. Would Adam, would you like to give your experience on adding glass in classrooms and how that affects?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, we're doing it almost 100% of the time in classrooms right now. And most of those classrooms don't have projectors in the ceilings. They have flat screens. And the flat screen technology, as everyone knows, just sitting in your own living room on a Saturday afternoon watching something, you can do that in a perfectly daylit room. So Linda, do I just to get you engaged here? You have any thoughts on this one?
Hi, good morning, everyone. I would just add that as we're starting to look at these building renovations and new buildings, as Adam mentioned, we are incorporating more glass, and the way that we're thinking about it sometimes is having these instructional spaces on the edges of the building where you would have direct access to natural light with windows that are on an exterior wall. But we're also looking at opportunities where classrooms are actually in the middle. And so having those glass walls as a classroom wall helps to bring the daylight in from the corridor. And that also helps to cut down on glare. And one of the other things that we've been experimenting with some of these glassier classrooms is how you orient those. So you might actually have a solid wall where you might have a projection surface. and the others may be glass, and that helps in terms of distraction if you have corridors going around it or you have other classrooms nearby. And so there are a lot of really good successful examples that help us include daylight, but not so much distraction.
I think, not to tag on, but the other thing that our learning environments folks would say is that the glass is partly accessibility and welcome campus focused, as well as if people can see, as students particularly see the activities in the classroom and imagine themselves participating in that type of an activity or coursework, they feel more comfortable enrolling or participating in something that they hadn't considered. So the glass is actually an accessibility and welcoming benefit as well.
We find the same thing in all of our projects. A lot, the transparency is really beneficial, not only exterior as in daylighting coming in, and you can have shades if there's any conflicts with that, but also interior, but exactly what Beth, Linda, and Adam just talked about, just kind of accessibility, flexibility also to be able to expand outside of the classroom as well.
So our next question is from Heidi, and Heidi wants to know, will UMB have additional space at Dorchester Bay City? If so, how much and for what use? So for everybody that may or may not know, I imagine everybody on the call knows the reference to Dorchester Bay City. And if you don't, you can tell me that in the chat and I can go further into that, but I suspect everybody knows. And the answer to that question is no, and we don't know, and not yet, and we're not counting on it. So there is nothing, how much, none, and for what use, nothing at this point in time, Heidi. And then Jacqueline went on to ask more about the transparency of our classrooms here in this question. And I think we might have answered that question pretty well. But at the same time, I wanted to add on to the fact that these are just kind of principal ideas. We haven't, I hope we have the opportunity to look at seriously renovating Wheatley and our classrooms and work with designers and architects as we get further into actually making the changes. So there is a lot of work to be done between where we are today with the large master plan and the comprehensive master plan for the whole campus and specific projects like Wheatley and McCormick and what gets included and how that gets included. So we have seen in a lot of campuses and a lot of our work throughout other places how that is beneficial, and we'll continue to look at it as we do the design and renovation of our heritage buildings. I think that and then get going here. Anonymous, this is a very exciting plan. So happy to hear about the pedestrians buying more green space and taking advantage of our beautiful harbor location with windows and lights. Those of us in heritage buildings will be interested in know the process of determining the timing and location allocations. What is the process and timeline? So Anonymous, I believe that the process and timeline is we have it on our master plan. We've heard from a lot of people that we've talked to is that this is quite a bit of a priority for all of us. So we are looking at finding capital funding to start our master plan, and that is really the next step, is to continue to identify funding, and then after that we can identify a process of designing and allocating and looking at how we're going to physically improve our heritage buildings. So being in the master plan and being high in terms of a priority in the master plan is a really good thing. And the next steps are finding funding and going through the rest of the design process with everyone. And this is not a question, but a note on your previous slide. Oh, okay, thank you. We can take care of that. We will. John Silveria is no longer part of the UMB, and we will take him off and add his new person in. I think it happened in the, yes. Apurva, we are aiming to have all classrooms equipped with laser projectors, which are much brighter than traditional ones. Thank you, Apurva. Anonymous, with all the new glass around campus, will the administration/facility commit to cleaning the glass? I imagine yes, the good answer to that good question, and we would answer yes to that. Peter, is Wheatley, if Wheatley is being used as a prototype, what timeline is expected for the actual process of painter renovation? I think I might have answered that. If not, Peter, please add it back into the chat. I know we can go in that a little bit further. Will the existing Bayside offices be retained in this plan? I think I answered that question, Allison. If I didn't, please hit me again, hit us up again in the chat. Then Kristen, this has been really interesting to see. Thank you. I was wondering if you could speak a little bit to the timing of all of this, if it moves forward, and how it might impact operations of those currently using the buildings. Yes, so we are, I've answered part of that in terms of what the process is. We're in the draft phase. We're looking for comments before we make the master plan. Senior administration, the chancellor will be looking at this, and we'll be adding timing and priorities to the plan that will be published. So we're working on doing that. And then the big piece that I want everybody to understand is it is about funding and finding ways in which we can have capital funding come into the campus so we can begin the process. So the first one, Wheatley, it's difficult to say because we don't really know about funding sources yet. Hopefully we'll know a little bit more about other things that are happening and how that relates to our funding in a few months, and we can begin to look at how we implement the plan. I think we're through all of the questions. Team, do you see any that we didn't answer?
I think you got all of them, Dennis.
With that, everybody that attended, thank you very, very much for your time. And we will be here again today. So if you'd like to hear it again, or if you have a question, please join us again at 4. And we look forward to, if you want to come back for a repeat, that would be great. But also encourage others on the campus to join us at 4 today.